We never knew then why we were so much more. Indeed, before them, we never knew. As we progressed past the information era, we slowly but surely overcame the failings of politicians, the greed of corporations, and the horrors of poverty. It wasn't utopian, but it was a start, and that's always all we've ever needed. We slowly colonized our home system, beginning with Luna and Mars. At first shoddy and prone to malfunction permahabs, then underground cavern cities on both worlds. Before long, these worlds held multiple thriving metropolises beneath their surfaces, people living and working to harvest the rare natural resources of these planets. From there, the orbital shipyards of Jupiter were built, the colonies of Titan and Europa, harvesting water and methane for the burgeoning civilization our system held. And eventually, we broke out of Sol and found something new. We found life, Tau Ceti system, an established wild ecology of radial life forms that functioned on their own rules, yet to us it was a paradise, except for the lower gravity, that caused every colonist to have to take calcium supplements and rigorously exercise like the Martian and Lunans. No geological instability, no tsunamis, volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, none of that. The entire world seemed perfect, except there was something strange. Tau Ceti's life all seemed fragile compared to us. The animals and plants would simply break under any harsh duress by one of us, a kid able to break their bone analogies as easy as a dried twig. And moreover, while our biochemistries prevented any disease interactions, plant life from Earth proved to be wildfire to the planet. The native plant life was similar to Earth plants in a woody or cellulose-like exterior, but more like fungi in a soft, spongy inner layer. Plants would outcompete them, growing faster under the light gravity and even taller than the natives in some cases. To this day, we're still trying to rein in plant life that went wild on the planet, not to mention the rat infestations feeding off the wild grain and killing small fauna as competitors. We settled, cordoning off ranges for the native life while we tried to bring little pieces of Earth to our new home. Yet the question burned even brighter now. Are we alone in the universe? That question was answered. We weren't alone. There was other life, proven by the first pick captures of a generation ship kid-born on Mars, holding the godforsaken offspring of a salamander and a starfish that didn't even have the musculature to bite through our skin. Are we the only true thinkers? Well, that was our new million galactic question. We explored more, finding more barren systems we would harvest mineral, water, and solar wealth from, yet we never found intelligence. Not true intelligence. Smartest thing we ever found looked like a mix of a beetle and a chihuahua that lived in troops and showed minor empathy. In the meantime, these established systems set up the Terran sphere, sort of like the UN still on Earth, just with a lot more say than that rinky-dink little government buildings they've got in New York now. And in the face of a lack of intelligence, a small group of businessmen decided that if humanity could not find intelligence, they would create it. They began with your average chimp. Not much work went into the editing of the genes, just enough push towards intelligence that the first of the chimp were born. Now don't bring this up to any of them, they get a little offended. You think humans are strong, you haven't seen an angry chimp rip the arms of a damn bracken while it's charging through the snow at you. Now back in those days, your average chimp could count to about 120, read at a third grade level, and was capable of understanding minor industrial and labour tasks, something very appreciated by this little cabal. Now, these businessmen decided this was a wonderful success, and began using an off-planet research hub, as well as their own private world discovered, bought and paid for by them, to begin experiments. All this was after what they saw as a resounding success, after which they started branching out. With the chim, they had their workers, who they slowly edited over the course of about 40 years to be on par with human-level intellect, finally breaching that barrier to where, now, there was an equal to humanity. Of course, by that point, they weren't the only equals anymore. The next goal had been working on another highly intelligent species that could come in use. Tursiops truncatus. Now, the dolphin was your average aquatic pack hunter, but even before this it had been speculated they were fully sapient. Well, imagine the surprise when after a few initial births, they found that all they had to do was alter their vocal cords, and the next thing you know, an inadvertent already sapient being was discovered. Delphian Orcans don't really like how they were treated on Earth, considering they were essentially enslaved, slaughtered, eaten, under the assumptions they were non-sapient animals, but they were grateful to have a voice now and express their displeasure at humanity. Especially after this little group decided to engineer them to possess ancillary arms to create deep-water divers that could be stationed 24/7 on an ocean colony world recently established by that point, alongside Orcans and even specific whale types like spermantosapes. And so, these men in their little suits and ties would go and take whatever genetic stock they felt had potential and just make it like us, not in body, but mind. By the time it all came out, there were established populations of enough different species from Earth that they qualified as actual substantial numbers and viable breeding populations. Gorillas, chimps, grey parrots, ravens, octopi, squid, orca, bears, dogs, cats, all with specific purposes for business planning, at least in their minds. The result was an outrage, one that threw the entire Terran sphere into a moral dilemma. We suddenly had over a dozen species of intelligent, thinking, and talking lifeforms that wanted freedom and equality amongst us. It was an utter shitstorm. Took about 4 years for the final verdict to be used by the Colonial Federation Charter Commission, or the CFCC. Under the paragraph 12, section 8, sapient life discovered will be subject to an inclusion policy, given collective agreement to CFCC rights, laws, regulations, and understandings of inherent biological differences. This includes full citizenship, agreed upon colonization rights for ideal worlds, and mutual cultural dissemination. After this, the entire planet they had all been living on was named by them, and still is listed as the birthworld of many of them. Moreau, named after some dinky 19th century sci-fi author that wrote a book about a guy vivisecting animals into people. Still never could figure out if it was meant as an insult to us or a badge of pride for them. Most of them divided into nations, much like humans have, and even to this day there are dozens of different polities made up of solely 1 or 2 Terran races, which caused a name change to the Terran sphere. It became the Terragen sphere, the progeny of Earth, as they called the decision at the time. But that's the story behind the Terragen sphere, before we met the tyulil, and entered into something we never would have guessed about. Now by this point, humanity and its little pet projects turned people on a generation shop happened to be woken up. Not by the arrival to the planned system, no, but another adjacent star system it passed through. The home system of the tyulil, the outermost members of the confederacy. Now, you know what a tyulil is, right? No? Jesus, you're dumb as hell sometimes, rookie. A tyulil stands about 9 feet 8 inches in height, or about a shade under 3 meters if you're one of those metric people. Look a bit like a gorilla or Sasquatch, even if the eyes are on the size of their head, and they've got a third arm coming from their chests. Now, these guys basically just had an unknown ship that wasn't responding to them, and on an automatic system movement towards their home planet, so what do? They cracked it open. They boarded and found the colonists, and panicked so much after waking them up, they blew the damn thing apart after seeing them. Now, you can imagine when that ship auto-transmitted its black box recordings back to its originator colony, the jungle world Fianna. The uproar was massive. Now, Fianna is a mostly uplifted species colony, inhabited by the Gaul, the Par, and the Corvians. Now, these guys weren't happy, so they let the entire sphere know what just happened, and man, let me tell you, the vids from that time were amazing. You've got movies, books, etc., all showing tyulil and Terragens in such heated battles. It made that old Star Wars crap nothing. The reality was disappointing. The sphere built up an entire war fleet, all generation ships, so all those leaving would be going off to fight something, leaving behind their friends, families, their troops, pods, flocks, packs, all for the defense of something that before everyone bickered about the state of. Too money-driven, they say. And considering our brother and sister races from Earth were made by amoral business tycoons, they probably weren't too far off. After about another 40 years, well, they got there. And as it turned out, the tyulil weren't ready for us. You see the war footage from that time occasionally, and man, you know, it's one thing to watch an armored gorilla with a gauge rifle firing off and ripping a man to death with his hands. It's another to watch an alien battle line on planetside. An alien battle line composed of a species far more imposing than a human or gorilla in looks, and be afraid of what you can do. The Tyulil literally couldn't win in a fair fight with any of us. A parrot could rip out their throats with ease, bears destroyed their comparatively far less durable vehicles, and could kill hundreds before being properly brought down a single chimp or gorilla, killing dozens with their bare hands before even pulling out any weapons. God, there's footage of a swarm of corvians with heated blades in their beaks and claws, turning an entire swath of Tyulil army to literal roasted mincemeat. Their orbital weapons were strong, yes, but they also didn't have the kinetic drivers we did. They mainly focused on intense plasma and kinetic forces, often using a kinetic pulse to push a ship, liquefy its occupants, and then pound it with plasma until it was slag. Turns out most of their shielding was built to combat this. Not solid accelerator rounds that could shred through them like a sniper round like a sniper round through butter. Turns out, military ships made by us, unlike colonization vessels, were a bit much for them. Their kinetic pulses were damned useless. Too many shock absorbers on our ships, and as it turns out, we're more durable than they thought. Even birds are. That's something important to remember. In total, they accumulated such high casualties to this day, they say we're all demons of skin, fur or feather. After we actually took the planet, we'd only lost about 4 out of 15 ships, and only about a quarter of the expeditionary army, while what was left of their fleet, 2 ships, hightailed it out of there, on actual fucking FTL, something we'd never even presumed might exist in reality, since we'd never been able to crack it. And we finally learned what was up after the terrified civilian populace of their planet was finally able to talk to us after several linguist specialists decoded their language for our use, let us break into their translators and add our own language ciphers to them. Because, unbeknownst to us, we were a statistical anomaly. We shouldn't have existed, even able to get off our own planet without annihilating ourselves. We came from a world where the gravity was crushing, the ecology was vicious, and even the planet itself was trying to kill life, called us Hellworlders. There was a few snigs at that the old humanity fuck yeah people were actually right about that, humans being something different. But turns out, in the eyes of the galaxy, we would be different in another way. About several weeks later, when a much larger fleet, composed of more Tyulil ships, as well as dozens and dozens of other far different vessels that could only be other species. Talks were tense for a while, nearly spilling into open conflict, but after the entire blowing up a colonization ship of Hellworlders unprovoked, after they accidentally entered your system, defense was thrown up. The reaction was understood. After talks, the Tyulil were no longer occupied, and the Terran sphere was asked to join the Confederacy. We declined, after looking over their laws. Quite restricting, but there was a particular note that stuck in the call of many. Now, humanity, when we were first no longer alone, when we uplifted all those different species, we didn't know it, but we had broken about a dozen different Confederate laws. And if we were to join, our partners in the Terragen sphere would have to subject to bio-pogroms to return them back to a naturalized state. Now, as you can imagine, this did not go over well. I believe it was said that the Orkan Monroe magistrate nearly clamped his jaws around the head Confederacy diplomatic agent in rage at hearing that. And so in the end, no, we didn't join the big alien UN that really just wants peace amongst the galaxy. No, we just headed off in the opposite direction, expanding that way while our neighbours looked at us in worry. Yeah, we trade, we mingle, yeah, but they fear us instinctively. Not just humans, but all of us. Because now there's not just humanity, a statistical anomaly in and of itself, but now there were over a dozen different species of Hellworlders, with independent nations that could annihilate entire swaths of their worlds, if even several large troop transports made it to their planets. They still belittle us, occasionally, or act as if we're in the wrong for keeping our little creations and calling them equals. You know what I say? No one likes being told what to do for long. Chims didn't, Gauls and Delphi didn't from the first day. Orkans look at us as both friends and slavers for shit like SeaWorld that happened a few hundred years back. Dogs. They still love us for all the ethical controversy that caused that hasn't changed, but they hate aliens. Something about them really messes with their aggression towards the other, when it isn't recognizable. Most are more like humans, ambivalent or rather uncaring of the Confederacy, due to their own agendas and goals. You know what I say? I said they all secretly love us after what happened. They were facing the option of a second slavery, and humanity as a whole refused it. Not out of being told what they can or can't do, like the aliens like to say, but because we made these guys. They didn't ask to be given intelligent thought or feelings like we've got. So we've got an obligation to help them, do what we can for them, help them out of the pitfalls we fell into. We never had that, and I think it's something they didn't expect. Our partners never expected it, and I think it won us more respect and admiration because it meant we would protect them now, no matter what. You know why I'm telling you all this, rookie? You hear that drumming? That's the Gaul and Chim troop clades readying up with Ursine bruisers. The deep, sonorous clicking? The Delphi grav skimmers and their 3 dimensions attuned pilots ready for aerial combat no other species has seen. That chirping and squawking? Par and Corvian soldier flocks, crying their praises to their ancestors. So you understand what we're doing today. You're going to take that gun, you're going to join up with the Orcan war swimmers, and you're going to go kick some alien ass on some bugs who thought they could glass a planet just because they didn't like we were close to their territory. And buddy, they're Confederates. You know what that means. Time for the galaxy to see what war is truly like for Terragens.